your elbows are in palms. And repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
Keeping the palms joined. Put the palms down. All right, good evening, everybody. How y'all doing today? Everybody's okay? Anyone here for the first time? What brings you here? First timers.
Just checking it out. Yeah.
What are you checking out?
See what works.
Good. What else? Who's here for the first time?
Here for the first time for this class. I've come a couple of times for the private sits.
Nice.
So I'm from Florida. I'm probably going to move to San Diego.
Yeah.
See what this is about.
Nice. Did you call the other day?
I might have.
Yeah. Well, welcome. Glad you're here. I'm not nearly as good as the other classes, but I'll do my best. I saw another hand. First time here. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, what? First time here?
Yeah.
How come you're here?
I don't know. I just wanted to check it out.
Wanted to check it out. Right on. Do you want to lead the class tonight?
What?
Do you want to lead?
What?
Like, do you want to teach tonight? No? How old are you?
12.
12. That's old enough. You sure? I could take the night off. You could just sit here and talk to these people for an hour. No? That's just, I bet you got a lot of wisdom there. It's funny, I laugh because Buddhism is a funny thing because, everybody wants to share it and teach it and lead it and guide it and all those kinds of things. And years ago, more so in the other location, but when Buddha View was over in the college area, and we'd see all the monks coming in, Thai, Lao, Cambodian temples that were, in the neighborhoods over there. And, I'm without getting too far into it, a Mahayana Zen Buddhist practitioner. And so, Mahayana Buddhist, engaged Buddhist folks, they always want to share the Dharma and give talks and, help people with their stuff. Theravada monks is very different. And so they would always come in, and early on, we were holding classes every week there and also temple downtown at that time. And we'd always ask them, like, do you want to teach? And they never said yes. They've been at this practice like 30 years as Buddhist monks, and you'd ask them to teach, and they're like, no, I got nothing to teach. Here we take like 8 hours, we get certified, and we want to go teach the world about all of our wisdom, So it's a funny thing, this practice, because it is something to really humble yourself with. And, if you're brand new to this, then this is kind of like a warning. If you've been at this for a long time, then it's a reminder if you haven't heard it. But to really just begin every day to ask yourself, like, wow, am I being kinder and gentler today than I was yesterday? And that's it. Like, at least for me, that's what it boils down to. Am I being kinder and gentler today than I was yesterday? And that never changes. that never stops. There's never like this moment where like, okay, I've attained complete niceness to everyone in the world. I mean, you know, at least I don't know how to get there. But for me, the practice is to just remind ourselves that we're just starting over every day. And that's the Zen mind, beginner mind, that we're just beginning every day. Because every day you're going to be constantly challenged with difficulties and chaos and stress and pressures and worries. And, it's every day. That'll never change. And so this practice is just a daily, gentle reminder of like, man, I got nothing to teach. I'm just trying to get through the day myself. So, all right. So with that, we'll sit. Welcome to those who are joining virtually. Glad you're here. Feel free to, as you are, say hello. Chat box there somewhere on the screen. If you are here for the first time or sitting for the first time, a couple things I'll tell you before we begin. Nothing's going to happen to you. You're not going to float away. You're not going to have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice, meaning don't ask yourself, is this working or not working? Are you doing it right or wrong? We're just going to sit. We're going to breathe. You'll hear sounds inside, sounds outside. This is life. Life is filled with chaos. And this practice is learning to get quiet and still within all of the chaos. Posture, you want to be comfortable. If you are on a cushion, often it helps slide into the front third. Pushing the stomach forward allows the back to straighten. Same thing if you're on a bench or a chair, however you're seated. Just trying to keep the shoulders upright but relaxed. Hands can be on the knees or in the lap. Most important, especially if you're new, you're not trying to empty the mind. You're not trying to go blank. You're not trying to think nothing. You're just going to sit and breathe, and thoughts will continue to race. And I will say things periodically to remind you to come back to present moment using sensation of breath. Just don't expect anything. We're just going to sit and breathe. I'll guide us as we begin, and we'll settle into a little bit of silence. And starting with the eyes closed, if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And eventually, settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Start with gently guiding the attention, focus, to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath, expecting nothing but to sit and breathe. And as the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it. Release that thought. Return attention, focus to the breath. Breathing in, follow breath in. Breathing out, follow breath out. Letting go of expectations. Letting go of judgment from the practice. Just sitting, breathing. keeping the mind alert. Aware of each sound. Each thought. Each physical sensation. Yet concerned with nothing but sitting, breathing. And with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds. And the mind learning to settle, know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. and no one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. And once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And as you slowly open the eyes, slowly beginning to move, and most important, the practice of meditation is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm, and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, has nothing to do with anything I said. Nothing to do with how we sit and hold the hands or cross the legs. It's nothing to do with the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It's everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakened. He was a human being, no different than any one of us, who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. And what that means, very simply, for all of us, regardless of where you come from or what you believe in or where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen and you react. More stuff happens, more reactions. That's it. That's what we get. This practice is simply learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way you responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond to everything else that's happening throughout your day. And so all we're working on is closing the gap to where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. It's not an easy practice. It's not necessarily fun. This is not the escape that people often think it is. If your life is a crazy, hectic, stressed out mess, meditation doesn't fix that. It makes you simply become aware of the fact that your life is a crazy, hectic, stressed out mess, so you can then make changes in your life. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice is free. Sitting, breathing, becoming aware of what you think, what you say, and what you do. That's the heart of this practice. This is our karma, what we think, what we say, and what we do. It's what we bring into the world. And very often our thoughts and our words and our actions are not so kind. And so we tend to create conditions around us that are not so kind. Very often our thoughts and words and actions are kind. And then we tend to create those conditions around us. But the catch really is understanding that no matter how kind your thoughts and words and actions are, doesn't mean everyone else is going to be that way. And when they're not, we practice even more. The more challenges, the more difficulties, the more conflict, the more anger, the more frustration that we face and feel from others must motivate us to discipline ourselves even greater. Because when people are struggling and they're hurting and they're having a hard time and they're doing things you don't like, they don't need the anger back at them. They don't need the frustration back at them. They need the kindness and compassion back at them. And that's very difficult to do. That's why we call it a practice. But very often we keep our minds wrapped up in the frustration, the resentments, the anger, all the things that didn't go how we wanted it to. And all that time we spend angry about all the stuff that's happened in the past, we're actually missing opportunities to enjoy the beauty of each moment as it arises. And so for me, this practice really every day, it's a reminder. It's a reminder to have gratitude and appreciation for everything that we have in our lives, because we don't know when it'll be gone. We've all done some good, we've all done some bad, and here we are. So, give yourself a break once in a while and try not to be so hard on yourself either. So with that, I'll pause. For me, I really just prefer to respond to questions, meditation, Buddhist practice, anything that you're sitting with, and we'll use the rest of our brief time this evening, and I'll just respond to your thoughts, your questions. So, and again, for those who are joining virtually, glad you're all with us. Feel free, as you are, to continue just any thoughts or questions. You can type them in the chat box there, and I'll do my best to respond. So we'll open up to questions.
I have a question I think is probably pretty elementary, but I'm thinking of my little ones that I brought with me. Can you touch on how I've always shied away from organized religion with the idea of right and wrong and God and good and bad, and I've always kind of thought of Buddhism as more of a philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
Can you kind of speak more to that?
Yeah, great question. So just to repeat it for those maybe virtually didn't hear it, but your question also with your kids in mind that are, here, you said you've always kind of shied away from organized religion, this concept of right and wrong and good and bad and things like that. And you've always seen Buddhism more as a philosophy. So just to touch on that, yeah. So first off, we are not organized around here at all, so you don't have to worry about that so much. There's many ways to look at this, and I'll start with kind of the good and bad, right and wrong piece, because I think that's, it's all important, but I'll start there. That when you look at Buddhist practice, really the focus is on what's the intention behind what you do. And so with what we think and what we say and what we do, are we thinking, saying, and doing things that are kind and gentle and compassionate and for the benefit of people around us, benefit of us? Or are we doing things that are filled with greed, anger, ignorance? That's the second noble truth, the cause of our suffering: greed, anger, ignorance. So it really comes down to the intention. Now, the idea behind good and bad and right and wrong, with regards to Buddhism, there's no and I'll touch on this in a minute, but there's no God in the Buddhist world that is judging your actions and saying bad, good, right, wrong, terrible person, go over there, great people, go over there. That doesn't exist in Buddhist practice. What exists is the law of cause and effect. So it's the understanding, really similar to what I said before, that if our intention is coming from a kind, compassionate, genuine, pure-hearted, loving space, then that's hopefully what we create around us. Now, we all deviate from that at times. Some more than others, some a lot, some all the time, right? There's ranges of that. And so I think it's important within Buddhism to not see things as so right versus wrong. Even when it comes to karma, without going into this too much, the Buddhist teachings on karma is it's not about good karma and bad karma. My master used to always say, actually remove the words good and bad, literally, from karma, because all karma is action. So there's no judgment in Buddhism. There's no God or person that's judging or labeling you as anything or anyone. You're just a human, and you're doing your best. Does that make sense so far on the good, bad intention part?
Yeah.
And then to kind of talk about, and really this is for everybody as well, but to talk about this idea of, is Buddhism a philosophy? Is it a religion? What is it? So in brief, when the Buddha lived, he was a human. He lived 500 years before Christ. They had beliefs in gods and goddesses as Hindus, and there were thousands of gods and goddesses, and they believed in them. The Buddha came along and he taught a simple way of life. He was not a god. People asked him specifically if they should believe in gods and goddesses. Again, very different from the God that we look at today in a Western context. And he said, if you do believe in gods and goddesses, you do. If you don't, you don't. It's up to you. That's what he was telling the people, because he himself wasn't a god. He was just a, person. And you fast forward to today, I look at something the Dalai Lama said, which I always repeat, where somebody asked him if this country needed more, talking about the United States, if this country needed more Buddhists. And his answer was, the world has enough Buddhists. We don't need more Buddhists. This country needs more people who are peaceful and happy. And years ago, a friend of mine who was Catholic got into Buddhist practice, and she referred to it as a software upgrade. And she said that her integration of Buddhist teachings into her life actually brought her closer to her religious faith. And I think that's a beautiful application because, for all the people that come here, anytime, how many Buddhists in the room? You're going to see maybe 1.5 hands, and that's usually the people that aren't sure, right? For the most part, 99.9% of the people that come here are not Buddhist. They're not trying to become Buddhist, and we're not trying to make you Buddhist. We're just trying to help you be kind and peaceful and compassionate. And if you have a religious belief, keep that. If you don't have one, then that's up to you as well. So in that regard, Buddhism is, by definition, by Western definition of no belief in a God specifically, that there is not, you would define Buddhism not as a religion, but a way of life. Now, just to kind of throw a little, piece in there, just for all of our knowledge, you want to be careful with that, because if you go into a Thai temple, a Cambodian temple, Lao temple, Vietnamese temple, Japanese temple, Taiwanese temple, like 30 of them literally within a 15-mile radius of here, and you walk in and say that's not a religion, it's a way of life, it's kind of insulting. I mean, they're not going to feel insulted. They'll just kind of, maybe chuckle. But to them, to people who grew up with it, it is practiced devoutly and very religiously. In a Western culture, it's really practiced more as a philosophy and a way of life. So I see the beauty of both sides, and really what matters is how it speaks to you. So, yeah. Mm-hmm. I'll add one more thing. We see obviously over the years a lot of people coming to Buddhism that are maybe coming from other religions with maybe a not such a great taste in their mouth of that religion. And this usually happens with younger folks, but they kind of come in and they're like, all right, well, how's this Buddhism going to fix me and save me and make everything all better? The Buddha died 2,500 years ago. He can't fix you or save you. You're on your own. So, that's really what it comes down to. Yeah. Other thoughts, questions? Yeah.
So when Thich Nhat Hanh or the Dalai Lama are meditating or doing this practice, where they're getting centered and they spend a lot of hours meditating and things like that, are they just trying to get to the quietness of their soul, or are they trying to get to a spiritual connection with something? I don't know if that's
it made perfect sense.
okay.
I'm just filtering through the 7,000 things I could say right now in my head. So your question is, to repeat for those who didn't hear, when someone like a Dalai Lama or Thich Nhat Hanh, and Thich Nhat Hanh did pass away, just want to make sure you're aware. But your question is, when somebody like a Dalai Lama or Thich Nhat Hanh is meditating, are they trying to get to this like quiet place and in their soul, or are they trying to develop a deeper spiritual connection with something or someone? That's kind of the nature of your question. My first thing always is, I can't tell you a darn thing about what the Dalai Lama or Thich Nhat Hanh when he was alive were doing during meditation. I have no idea. So the first response is, you'd have to ask the Dalai Lama. Couple things I can tell you very specifically is the Buddhist teachings very clearly state there is no soul. So I can tell you that any Buddhist monks who really follow the teachings and the practice, there's no soul to connect with. So that one's really easy, right? There is what's known as alaya vijnana, storehouse consciousness. That all we are is just a physical body with a collection of consciousness that's been cycling around for endless time and will continue. The other thing I can tell you is that people like that, and this is my guess and my assumption from being around this stuff long enough, is that they're not trying to get anywhere. With meditation, there's nowhere to get. There's nowhere to go. The practice is to be with the present moment and be at peace with that. The mistake people often make, right, Again, I'm not saying you, but the mistake people often make is having this idea that like, all right, I'm angry, I need to get to some peaceful place. And then you're pissed off. Sorry, excuse my language. Then you're upset because you're not at your peaceful place yet. And you're like, just be with whatever is arising. That is the practice. There's no place to get to. Thich Nhat Hanh, Dalai Lama, incredible teachers, practitioners, followers of Mahayana Buddhism and the Heart Sutra. Both, actually, the two of them have done, in my opinion, the greatest translations of the Heart Sutra that are out there. And the Heart Sutra specifically, which is very, very brief, it'll take you all of about 60 seconds to read it, and the rest of your life to, try to make some sort of sense of it, right? But it very clearly says, with nothing to attain, bodhisattvas relying on prajnaparamita, which is perfection of wisdom. Bodhisattvas are enlightened beings. With nothing to attain, enlightened beings relying on perfection of wisdom attain anuttara samyak sambodhi, which is supreme ultimate enlightenment. There's nothing to attain. There's no spiritual plane to go to. There's just you, your mess, your craziness, your life. Stop trying to escape from it. Stop trying to achieve some grand spiritual awakening, because you're going to be waiting a really long time. And be nice to people. Does that help? Yeah. It's really hard. How long have you been at this practice?
Meditating?
Yeah. And
Probably just since, I want to say maybe it was around November or Christmas.
so like 3 months.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my greatest piece of advice is stop trying to attain anything. Wake up to your own levels. When I say you, I mean all of us, of greed, anger, and ignorance. And don't use meditation as the fix. I can't stress that enough. It is one of the biggest mistakes people make on this spiritual journey, whatever that journey is for you, is people come into this stuff thinking, meditate, meditate, meditate. You even said, I think in your question, like they spend hours a day meditating. Yeah, I'm not so sure about that. They got a lot of stuff to do. They're pretty busy. We see monks and we think that they just spend hours a day sitting around doing nothing. I'll tell you what, I spent a year living in a monastery, and those monks and nuns work harder than anybody I've ever seen. They sleep about 6 hours a night, and they're busting their butts all day long to make life better for people. They're not just sitting there meditating under a tree. They work really hard, but their intentions are pure. Their actions are pure. That's the practice. Most Western people come into this stuff and thinking, I'm just going to meditate and everything will be fixed. One of my favorite expressions is an angry person who meditates is just an angry meditator. You better figure out why that anger is there. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
So I'm just kind of, now that you're like a pro at this after 3 months, I'm just trying to dissect your question. Because there's a lot in the way we ask things, which gives tremendous insight into, maybe what we're trying to get to. That's what I heard in your questions. Like, okay, what's next for you? How do you get there? One breath at a time, one awareness of thoughts, words, and actions at a time. That's the practice. That's what they teach. Yeah. Other questions?
When you're at the monastery, what kind of things do the monks and nuns do for other people?
What do they do for other people? Oh, man. So I would say then I'll get into some specifics, but the general idea, like behind there, and this is Mahayana engaged Buddhism, Bodhisattva path, Bodhisattva practice. This is not Thai forest tradition where you're like remote, living, working on attaining nirvana yourself. You're actually engaged with the people. So it's two completely different schools of Buddhism. And their entire day is about recognizing, and I'm referring obviously to that specific experience, that there are literally thousands of people that will show up there every single day seeking something. And so if the monks or nuns are simply pulling weeds around the property, if they're sweeping, if they're cleaning the toilets, they're doing that so the people who show up there are comfortable. I mean, monks or nuns or not, most people don't just wake up and think, I want to clean the toilet today. But they do these things because they know that somebody's got to clean them. And we want them clean for the people who show up and use them. The way they make sure that everybody is comfortable. And some of you may know, but I spoke, somewhat recently about my direct master here, Venerable Yijur, who passed away, the nun, and the founder of that foundation, and I'm not going to get into it right now, but who, spent since 90, was a monk for 85 years. He became a novice monk at 12. Master Xingyun, and he was my first master, my direct master. And he just passed away 2 days ago. And novice monk at 12, 85 years, 97. He built Buddhist temples and monasteries literally all over the world. I mean, there are millions and millions of people. He opened Fo-Guang Shan in 1967 when it started in Taiwan. And he always said, give people comfort, give people convenience, make them enjoy being around the Dharma. And so everything that the monks and nuns do is to create an environment that is conducive for people to learn and study and practice this Buddhist path. And I think even just the mindset of them, their studies of Buddhist teachings, their chanting constantly of Buddhist sutras to transfer merit for other people, like everything in what they do is about this recognition of as we say, the accumulation of merit, which accrues from these karmic actions, but then giving all of that away. So the practice of generosity is that everything you're doing is to be a benefit to others. And then the question is, okay, well, how do we bring that into our lives? And so when you're kind to people, you're giving them a lot. When you listen to people, you're giving them a lot. When you forgive people, you're giving them a lot. When you pay attention to people, you're giving them a lot. So, yeah. Hopefully that's helpful. Yeah. And you just kind of feel it too. Like you just see, like just everything they're doing is for other people, What else? Questions? And to add on that, I mean, I think we all know that when we help people in our lives, whether it's people we know and love and care about, whether it's complete strangers, when we help people, we we feel good. So that practice of giving, that practice of generosity, that practice of being there for other people, that makes us feel good. And it's not about, people always ask this, if we feel good from helping people, like, is that wrong or bad? No, And even at the beginning, a lot of times people do things, we see it a lot, over the years of the food distribution. Like so many people for the last 12 years show up to that because it makes them feel good to give. And they would ask me like, well, should I stop going then? No, just keep helping people. If you're showing up knowing that it's making you feel good, then that's a great start. And ultimately we do things to help people, not just because it makes us feel good. But we got a long ways to go. So yeah. Questions? Yeah.
I find that a lot of people say when they're trying to change, it's like 2 steps forward, 1 step back, it's a repeat. And for me, it seems more like 2 steps forward, 2 steps back, and spinning my wheels. And so my question is, how does somebody change, like at a really deep level? How does somebody really go?
Yeah. That's a great question. How does somebody change at a really deep level? And to repeat, and I'll kind of close on this topic and question, I think, to repeat the question for those who didn't hear it was, you said that some people say, life, spiritual practice, whatever, healing, I forget what word you use, so I'm just making up my own words, but that it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And you said for you, it seems more like 2 steps forward and 2 steps back, which my math would put me in the exact same place where you started. And I think that's the point of your question. And so your question is, how does one really change? Right? That's what you want to know? The first thing I'll suggest, just, since I don't know you at all, is you're probably too hard on yourself. Is that a fair statement? Is that nodding the head up and down? Yes, I just want, for the record, I want everybody. What's your name?
John.
John. Can everybody look at John? Hey, John, are you too hard on yourself sometimes?
Yeah, most of the time.
Most of the time. Does most of the time equal all the time?
No, sometimes I'm aware enough to be kind of.
Okay, I wanted to see where the limit was, The fact that you're sitting here, how many times have you been here?
Quite a bit.
Yeah. And you're asking that question. That's a lot of steps forward. Because there's a time in your life, I'm sure, just like all of us, that we wouldn't have cared about changing. We wouldn't have wanted. And you don't want to just change, like you want to deeply change. That intention, that craving, the Buddha teaches craving and desire leads to our suffering. But he also said healthy cravings, healthy desires. Without the desire to end suffering, none of us would be on this path. So my hope is that you give yourself some credit for recognizing that changing deeply is really important to you. And there was a time where you didn't care about that. That's a lot more than 2 steps. Now that I've completely set up some scale for you, I'm going to suggest you abandon all of that. And my suggestion is to stop judging. I always laugh at people say, people say, well, who are these people and what do they know? A lot of people say this, those people, who? That's irrelevant. None of us really know. We're all just making stuff up. And then we repeat it. And that's the dangerous part. Because then people actually believe you. And that's even more dangerous, right? The challenge for John is to recognize, can I wake up every day and remind myself that I want to deeply change whatever it is in your life that you want to change. And as long as you hold that intention, you'll keep doing the things that are required. But no, it doesn't. I could rattle off, well, look at the Buddhist teachings on the, which I do constantly, right? I could rattle off, well, look at the Buddhist teachings on the paramitas and just be, every day mindful of generosity, morality, patience, diligence, concentration, and wisdom, and break down those teachings with regards to how, we integrate that into our life from the Buddhist teachings. But that's all on Google. That's all simple to read and recite and memorize. What nobody else can do, and no book can give you, and no Dharma talk can do for you, is you, John, waking up every single day with that burning desire to deeply change. As long as you have that, you will. And just stop putting a time frame on it. Because you're already way better off than you were before. You wouldn't be asking this question, looking for answers. But the second we start to judge, well, I've been at this for a year, I should be better by now. It goes back to the earlier question, what is better? Right? Similar theme really in both the questions of this, when am I going to get there? The easy way to respond to abandon this idea of when am I going to get there is to truly understand there's nowhere to go. Just experience each moment and bring pure intention to it. And make that the course of your life. Does that make sense? Yeah. So, anything else before I wrap up? All right, so we'll go ahead and we'll close. We'll join palms. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all beings be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to Master Xingyun during his time of rebirth. So thanks all. Eddie, do you want? Yeah, he's ready to go. The one thing I was going to say before Eddie does the announcements is, and I know I kind of dropped that bit out a little bit about Venerable Master Xingyun passing away, and so I'm still sitting with all of that, so it wasn't really my intention to talk about it. But something that Maggie said earlier, yesterday when we were talking about this, which is so true, that without him, Dharma Bum Temple doesn't exist, which is really crazy to think about. So, and at some point over the next, week or two or whatever, then I'll share more on the impact and things like that. But
Hello, everyone. I am Eddie. I'm tonight's host, Eddie. We opened the Dharma Bum Temple 15 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. Those who lead are not nuns, monks, gurus, masters, or teachers, are not looking for students. They're simply practitioners sharing their interpretation of the practice with others. Almost every night we have different classes led by people from various Buddhist traditions. We have a recovery sangha that meets several times a week for anyone battling addiction, a family sangha for parents, kids, toddlers, and teens which meets once a month, and a half-day silent retreat the first Saturday of the month. Everything we offer here is always free. The full schedule is on our website and posted in the entryway above the shoe rack. We also have a lending library. If you see a book you like, feel free to borrow it and then bring it back whenever you are done with it. Please straighten your seat or cushion before you head out. Thank you for being here. We wish you well and hope to see you all again soon.
Thanks, Ed.